Hi everyone, welcome to another Hatton's Model Railways live stream. Now, 2020 has been a year unlike any other that most of us have experienced. But when it comes to model railways, we've still seen some fantastic releases coming through from a variety of manufacturers, really making sure that we can still enjoy the year with lots of new releases and many brand new top models coming out too. I thought it was a great time, now we're coming up towards the end of the year, to have a look at my top 5 brand new tooling steam locomotives that have come through. So all the locos we're going to look at today are brand new toolings. There's no old features on them at all, and they were all released for the first time in 2020. I've got all 5 here so we can have a closer look at them, and I'll give you the reasons why they are in my top 5 too. We've got some great models to look at here today, and I really think every single one of them is worthy of a place on your layout. So if you've got any questions regarding the models that we've got here today, I've put a link in the description which should link you to all 5 of these different projects that we have available right now and the stock that we have available on our system. If you've got any queries at all and you're watching live, please put them in the chat and I'll answer as many as I can throughout the stream. If you're watching a little later on, either get in touch with our customer experience team or leave a comment on the video and we'll be happy to answer your questions there. But let's get started. Let's start where it all began, with Stevenson's rocket. This was the locomotive built in 1829, provided for the Rainhill trials to supply motive power for the then under construction Liverpool and Manchester Railway, which was the first intercity railway built in the world. This brand new locomotive design incorporated many new features compared to engines that were being built in this embryonic era of railways and led the way for locomotive design for over 100 years after this point. Holmby announced a brand new model in January 2020, and it was first released in March in one train pack, with a second train pack coming in the summer too. This was originally released by Holmby back in the 1960s under the Triang brand, but this is a full new tooled model. And as we can see here on the screen, the detail on this particular model is absolutely exquisite, giving some of the most detailed level of items on there that you can get onto a 2020 tooling model. And you can see there on the screen in front of me and on my workbench too just how small and petite a model this is, but it does incorporate a full motor in there. You've got 6-pin digital capacity too, and not only is it supplied as a loco in either of the train packs, you also got 3 coaches too, with different coach names dependent on the packs that came in. This model, as I'm sure you can imagine, was understandably popular at the time, and it did sell out very, very quickly indeed. So they do come up on our pre-owned section from time to time, so keep an eye out on there if you'd like to pick one of the brand new rocket sets up. But there may be further releases of this model by Holmby in the future too, so keep your eyes on our website, and if we hear any more about a re-release of this very popular model, we will certainly let everyone know as soon as we can. But it's great to see a model of this brand new 21st century quality, but of such a vintage prototype too. Of course, it's absolutely fantastic for running on preservation lines and placing in a museum on your layout too, with many rocket replicas and of course the original rocket now in the National Railway Museum at York. But for those of you who really want to go back to basics and start off, it's the first part you can build of a brand new detailed 1820s, 1830s layout. And who knows, we may see other locomotives such as the Planet to join the rocket here in the future too. This may be the start of something and a range that is coming through, sort of the very, very early era one models. So who knows, maybe on a future stream we'll be filling the table with models from the 1820s and 1830s. I'd certainly look forward to that one, and I hope you guys would too. Let's jump right over now. Let's go 100 years in locomotive development. So we're heading from the late 1820s up into the early 1930s, and we can see the changes in locomotive design from the Rocket, the express passenger locomotive of 1829, to the LMS Princess Royal, the LMS passenger locomotive of the early 1930s. This has been a loco that's been in Holmby's range right back to the Triang days in quite a few different models of various different details, and it was really appropriate for Holmby to release a brand new super detailed tooling in its centenary year. The first releases we saw of this covered Princess Elizabeth and a couple of other numbers too in some of the colour schemes carried by the class, including the LMS Crimson Lake we can see here from the 1930s, right through to the last livery that they carried, the BR Maroon here seen on the locomotives in the late 1950s and the early 1960s. And this is a fully new tool model, as is everything we see here today. I've got one here in front of me, and you can check out more details on our YouTube channel or Facebook page where we've done a video on these particular models too. But the features on this really show it is a model that's been tooled up within the last year. It's got a flickering firebox in there. It's got an 8-pin digital capacity with space for a sound speaker in the tender, full NEM couplings. You've got alternate front bogies there if you want your super detail bogies rather than running around some of the tighter curves. And it really is a full upgrade from any of the LMS Pacific locomotives that Holmby have released prior to this, other than the most recent Princess Coronation, which looks absolutely fantastic alongside this locomotive. And this is one a lot of you LMS fans were waiting for. With the release of the brand new Princess Coronation we previously mentioned about 2 years ago now, the gap was there for just as detailed a model of the Princess Royal to be able to create all those express services running up the West Coast Main Line into the northwest of England and lower Scotland from London. And now you can do it with this brand new model with many, many tooling differences covering the 12 members of the class fully authentically throughout their lives too. You'll have a look at some of the locos that we have there and see some of the really nitty-gritty details that Holmby have absolutely slaved over to make sure that these locos are as accurate as they can. We've got quite a few of these available right now. If you head to the link in the description, they start at £171. We've got the BR Express Passenger Blue of the 1950s we see here. We have LMS liveries for you 1930s, 1940s modelers. And for you later BR modelers, we can sort you out of a BR Green or a BR Maroon Princess in 00 gauge for you too. So if you do like the look of this model, head over to our website to find out some more. And of course, pick one up today. So let's stick with that tender theme. Let's head over to a little bit more of a recent release. The Princess joined us earlier in the year, but within the last few weeks, we've had what has got to be one of the best locos to arrive in 2020. And this has been the hotly anticipated Dappol 43XX Mogul, which is now available in a variety of different liveries. Again, there's a huge amount of different detailing differences covering these locomotives from the original entry into traffic in the early 1920s right through to their withdrawal in the 1960s and subsequent lives in preservation too. It's been a while since Dappol has tooled up a completely new 00 gauge steam locomotive, and a lot of people were waiting with bated breath to see just how this model came out, and it's certainly been worth the wait. We've got a huge amount of features in there. We've got an 18-pin digital socket with absolutely no screws required to access that socket in the locomotive either. We've got excellent cab detail, as you can see there, NEM couplings. It's got a real presence and a weight about this model too. So it really has a great haulage capacity with the 5-pole motor that it contains. You've got space for a digital sound speaker. You've actually got space for 2 digital sound speakers. You've got space for a bass reflex in the tender and a speaker under the chimney too. So you can have the authentic chuffing sound coming from under the chimney, which is really appropriate to see on one of these locomotives. I think we've already got one fan there. AD Pulling mentioned everything that I've just told you there too. And who can say it better than AD there, really, where he's saying it's one of his top 3 locomotives, smooth runner, full of detail. I completely agree with you there, AD. This is one of my favourites of 2020. And it fills such a big gap in the Great Western Railway fleet in 00 scale too. It was a locomotive that's been around in a few ranges since the late 1970s. Mainline originally tooled up a model which was fantastic for its time. However, it did become more and more dated and superseded, and it was finally withdrawn from Bachmann's range in the early 2000s with a couple more liveries coming through. So it's been a long time coming for the 43XX to get a brand new model, but it's certainly been worth the wait. And again, you can check these out right now if you have a look at the link in our description there. They start at $135.96, which for the level of features and the quality of model and decoration that you get, I think is an absolute bargain. We've actually already sold out of some of the liveries, and I'm sure more will come in the future. But if you don't want to miss out, do head over to that link in the description now, and you can check out some of the colour schemes, including the initial Great Western colour scheme here, and of course, BR black and green early and late crest view 1950s and 1960s modelers too. So we've kept it all about tender engines at the moment. I've got three of the best here in front of me, heading from the Minute Rocket right up to the Princess Royal we have at the end here. But there's tank engines too. We've had some great new tank engine toolings come out in 2020 with brand new models announced and released again that have really needed a brand new model for them to come out too. So we'll have a look at Holmby's GWR Large Prairie. It's a great accompaniment for the Dappol 43XX, and this is available right now in 4 distinct liveries. This is very similar to the Dappol 43XX in that the Large Prairie has been part of Holmby's range for some time. The former Airfix model from the 1980s was upgraded with a new chassis and included in the Holmby range up until around the mid-2000s. But again, although it was a great release for its time, it began to become more dated alongside higher quality models that were coming through. So the market really was there for a brand new super detailed Large Prairie that we see here. Holmby's model covers the 61XX, 5101, and 41XX variations of these locomotives, and as they have done with the Princess, they have carried in lots of different minor tooling variations to make sure each locomotive is as authentic as it possibly can be. So the great option here is you can have lots of different liveries again. We've got 2 Great Western colour schemes and 2 BR colour schemes there too. Looking at the post-war GWR lettering that we have here, the 2 locomotives I have in front of me are the initial Great Western lettering from the 1920s and 1930s. Heading over to the BR Black of the early 1950s, I have the model in front of me here. And then for you modelers of the late 1950s and early 1960s, and of course number 4160 is one of the preserved Large Prairies, which you can see running around the country to this day. So it's an absolutely exquisite model. You've got space in there again for an 8-pin digital socket and a sound speaker. We do have these available right now, starting at £126 for a DCC ready model, and they are available with a digital decoder pre-fitted too. So again, head over to the link in the description for more information on which particular models we have available right now. So we've covered 00. There's been some fantastic 00 toolings out there this year. Tank engines, tender engines from a lot of different suppliers, covering eras right from the birth of railways up to the end of BR steam in the 1960s. And as King Gorry's mentioned there too, you can pick up these locomotives and run them on a preservation layout. So we're covering almost 2 centuries of railway operation with the locos we've seen here at the moment. But it's not just 00 scale that's had some brand new toolings come through this year. O-Gauge has had a real rebirth with the amount of locomotives and rolling stock coming through, a lot of which are partial retools and re-releases, which are no doubt just as popular, but we're here today to look at the brand new toolings. So let's have a look at this. This is the Dappol O-Gauge 14XX. It also covers the 58XX and the 48XX subclasses too. So all 3 variations of these popular 042 tanks are available in model form right now. These came out around the summertime, if I remember correctly, but they were announced back in 2019 and again have been hotly anticipated for some time now, mainly to work with locomotives such as Dappol's 57XX Pannier and Helgen's Large Prairie and 43XX in O gauge. It starts to bring together a real Great Western scene in 1/43rd scale. Plus, don't forget you've got your auto coaches available from Dappol too, which these are absolutely ideal to work with. But let's not worry too much about what the model runs with. Let's look at the model itself, because again, you get an absolutely exquisite amount of detail on these locomotives. Various different liveries being applied from the initial Great Western colour schemes of the 1930s when these locomotives were built, through into the BR blacks of the early 1950s, and then of course finishing with the late crest lined BR green that we see here applied to the locomotives in the 1950s and the 1960s. Great question there from Gareth regarding the pulling power of the 14XX. And although in real life they didn't have much of a haulage capacity, you'd be expecting them to run with a maximum of around 4 coaches. These models can outperform that by quite a long shot. On our test track, we've had 8 coaches behind one of these particular locomotives, which would really struggle in real life, but certainly has no issues with the high power 5-pole motor and the die-cast chassis that these models have fitted to them. You also get your firebox flicker there again, and I think it is the year of the firebox flicker this year. 2020 has seen this come back to so many models after many years of this feature being discarded by various different suppliers. We have it here today in the 14XX, the Princess Royal, and of course the 00 gauge Dappol Mogul too. So it's great to see the firebox flicker effect back in there. I know that's proven quite popular with you guys out there too. So we have the 14XX available right now in many different liveries, starting at $191.25. So click that link in the description for more information, and you can see which models we have available for you right now. But although this is my top 5, this certainly isn't all of the brand new releases we've had this year. We've had other new tooling steam locomotives come through, and we've had some great re-releases of steam locomotive models from N gauge to 00 and O gauge too. And head over to our website to find out information on every single item we've had into stock this year, whether it's a returning favourite or a brand new model we are seeing for the first time. But what's your favourite been? These are my 5, which I think are fantastic models and fill huge gaps in the model railway market, but there's certainly more out there. And if you've got a favourite that I've not covered today, please leave it in the comments or get in touch with us and we may cover it in a future stream for you. So do let us know. Otherwise, I'll just give you a quick run through again to show you my top 5 that you can see here. We started, of course, with the Stevenson's rocket available from Holmby. Keep an eye out on our pre-owned section for this model coming through. It is quite sought after now, but they do come through from time to time. Sticking with Holmby, we went over to the Princess Royal, as you can see here, fully brand new tooled LMS Express passenger locomotive, released first in early 2020. We had then the brand new 43XX Mogul from Dappol in 00 gauge. This again is a pretty new release coming in the autumn of 2020 and available right now in a few different liveries. Sticking with the Great Western theme, we have the Large Prairie from Holmby that you can see here. 4 distinct colour schemes available right now on this brand new tooling, highly detailed model. And then we went over to O gauge to have a look at a larger but still perfectly formed Dappol 14XX 042 tank engine. So I hope you've enjoyed that roundup of my top 5. If you've got any questions regarding the models that I've shown here today, please do let us know in the comments. Do put a note under the video to let us know which your favourite of these models is too. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and Facebook page for more great model railway videos, including our skills cast sessions, real railway profiles, and of course, all the latest model railway news too. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.